Hello everyone, welcome to our deep dive on Dell's Alienware Aurora R16 gaming desktop. Launched in late 2023, the R16 is the newest high-end desktop in Alienware's line, replacing the theatrical portal turret design of the R15 with a much more conventional black box chassis. Despite the tamer look, it still packs top-tier components, up to an Intel Core i9-13900K 13th Gen CPU, NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4090 GPU, and 64GB of DDR5 RAM. Storage tops out at 8TB via dual 4TB PCIe NVMe SSDs, and Dell equips it with a high-end 1000-watt Platinum PSU. In this video, we'll cover the R16's hardware, cooling, noise, connectivity, and gaming performance, and compare it to similar premium rigs like Corsair's Vengeance, the 7600, and MSI's Aegis Ti5, all based on real reviews and benchmarks from tech experts. Alienware designed the Aurora R16 to look and sound more down-to-earth than its predecessors. Gone is the alien flying saucer style. Instead, the R16 is a relatively compact 25.2-liter tower, about 18 inches by 16.5 inches by 7.8 inches, with rounded corners and an all-black finish. The only overt Alienware logo is the RGB lit Z power button on the front. Internally, however, Alienware has trimmed excess plastic to prioritize airflow, a glowing oval Alien FX LED loop around a front intake, honeycomb vents on the side, and exhaust fans on the top and rear channel fresh air through the chassis. Dell even replaced the clunky C19 power cable with a standard plug. One small downside, the side panel still uses a single thumbscrew release rather than more convenient handles, so opening the case isn't entirely tool-free. Despite the more restrained exterior, the R16 retains Alien FX RGB lighting, which is controllable via the Alienware Command Center software. Plus, there's a subtle light ring intake on the side panel. The build quality feels solid, and reviewers note that this simpler case is much easier to fit on a desk than the old bulky models. The trade-off is that it lacks the sci-fi flair some fans expect. As GamesRadar puts it, many players who want an oddball machine might look elsewhere. Overall, the R16's design is a pragmatic shift, a sleek black box that prioritizes cooling and quietness over showy design. The Alienware Aurora R16 is configurable with very high-end hardware. The top configuration uses an Intel Core i9-13900K 13th generation CPU and an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 4090 GPU, paired with up to 64GB of DDR5 memory. The review unit we've been referencing came with 32GB of DDR5 5600 and a GeForce RTX 4070 Super in one variant, but Dell offers upgrades up to the i9-13900K and RTX 4090 as options. Storage is handled by PCIe 4.0 NVMe SSDs. Dell allows up to two 4TB drives for a total of 8TB. The motherboard is a custom Z690 designed by Dell, and cooling is via a 240mm all-in-one liquid CPU cooler plus two 120mm chassis fans. Power is supplied by a beefy 1000-watt platinum-rated PSU, reflecting support for the power-hungry RTX 4090. In contrast, Corsair's competing Vengeance 7600 uses a standard MSI ATX motherboard and a 750-watt PSU in its reviewed configuration. The Corsair unit we saw featured a 14th Gen Core Ultra 7265K and RTX 4070 Super with 32GB DDR5 and 1TB SSD. It even has Thunderbolt 4 and Wi-Fi 7 on board, via an Intel B200, whereas the Alienware R16 maxes out at Wi-Fi 6E and lacks Thunderbolt. Meanwhile, MSI's MSI Aegis Ti5, an older 2021 model, was packed with a 10th Gen Core i9-10900K RTX 3080 and 128GB DDR4 RAM, illustrating just how far hardware has advanced. The R16's DDR5 and newer GPUs easily outpace that older spec. In summary, the R16 offers cutting-edge flagship specs for 2024 and 2025 gaming, with options going up to an i9 13900K and an RTX 4090. While Corsair's i7600 represents a similarly high tier with the latest 14th gen CPU options and RTX 40 series, MSI's Aegis Ti5 was one of the last generations of monster builds before DDR5. Alienware has outfitted the R16 with a comprehensive set of I/O ports. On the rear you'll find one 2.5 GB Ethernet jack, 4 USB 2.0 Type-A, 2 USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type-A, and 2 USB Type-C ports, 1 Gen 2 and 1 Gen 2x2. Audio is particularly well served. There are 3 3.5 mm jacks for line-in, line-out, and mic-in, plus optical SPDIF and a coaxial SPDIF output for surround sound setups. The graphics card offers an HDMI and 3 DisplayPort outputs for monitors. Up front, hidden behind a magnetic flap, are 3 USB 3.2 Gen 1 Type-A ports, and 1 USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type-C port, along with a headphone jack. This is a fairly ample array. Reviewers note the rear alone has 6 USB-A ports and 2 USB-C ports, far more than many pre-built gaming PCs. For comparison, the MSI Aegis Ti5 had only 1 USB-C and 2 USB-A on the front. Wireless connectivity on the R16 is courtesy of Intel Wi-Fi 6E AX210 and Bluetooth 5.3. Notably, it does not include Wi-Fi 7 or Thunderbolt 4, whereas the Corsair 17600 does feature Wi-Fi 7 and even a Thunderbolt 4 port. In terms of upgrades, the Alienware's custom board and layout make internal modifications tricky. Dell has used a proprietary LGA 1700 motherboard and attached I/O shroud, which reviewers warn will limit future CPU upgrades when Intel's platform ages. The case itself accepts the 240mm radiator it ships with, but it doesn't support larger 360mm radiators or additional drive cages, like some Corsair cases do. By contrast, the Corsair Vengeance uses a standard ATX case that can fit 360mm AIOs, extra 120 or 140mm fans, and up to 2 3.5-inch drives. In short, the R16 has plenty of ports, including extensive audio outputs, and uses up-to-date Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. But its proprietary motherboard and compact case somewhat reduce DIY upgrade flexibility. A major focus of the R16 redesign was quieter, more efficient cooling. Dell claims the R16 runs about 7% cooler and 20% quieter than the R15. In practice, testing confirms impressive thermals. In a prolonged Metro Exodus stress test, 15 runs at RTX Ultra preset, Tom's Hardware recorded the R16's Intel Core i9 14900 KF CPU package, averaging only about 65.2 degrees Celsius, and the RTX 4090 GPU at just 53.8 degrees Celsius. Even the more mainstream build with the i7 13700F and RTX 4070 saw the CPU at around 49.3 degrees Celsius and GPU at around 68.1 degrees Celsius. These are very healthy temperatures for such powerful parts. Likewise, GamesRadar notes that in real gaming the CPU never exceeded 90 degrees Celsius in any test, even on a high-end RTX 4090 model. This shows the 240mm AIO plus thoughtful airflow, front intake loop and side vent, really keep things cool. Noise levels are equally good. They emphasize that the eerie groans of the older R15 are gone, thanks to the more efficient cooler and fans. In one quote, the reviewer says the silence is truly golden with the new design. Similarly, the benchmark test kept fan noise to a minimum. Even in the Metro stress loop, the R16 was barely audible. One caveat. Tom's Hardware did point out that in that same stress test the fans were noticeable. The reviewer seriously noticed fan whirring, despite Dell's quieter claims. However, most practical gaming sessions, even under heavy load, don't seem to push the fans to that noticeable level of noise. Overall, real-world measurements and expert commentary indicate the Aurora R16 stays cool under pressure, maintaining performance without overheating. And generally runs very quietly, a testament to its improved cooling design. By comparison, the Corsair Vengeance in 7600 also impressed reviewers with its cooling and acoustics. The MSI Aegis Ti5, being an older design, was generally louder under its extreme performance mode, fans audible on the desk when pushed, which underscores how much cooling tech has advanced since then. Let's talk frame rates. We have detailed benchmark data from Tom's Hardware that pits the R16 in two configurations against other PCs. The short story, with an RTX 4090, the R16 is a 4K gaming monster, and even the RTX 4070 variant is strong at 1080p or 1440p. Here are some highlights at maximum settings, unless noted. Shadow of the Tomb Raider on the highest preset. The R16 with an i7 13700F and RTX 4070S hits 161 frames per second at 1080p and 54 frames per second at 4K. Meanwhile, the R16 with an i9 14900KF and RTX 4090 achieves 257 frames per second at 1080p and 131 frames per second at 4K. Grand Theft Auto V on very high settings. The 4070 system delivers 147 frames per second at 1080p and 37 frames per second at 4K. On the other hand, the 4090 system gives us 186 frames per second at 1080p and 85 frames per second at 4K. Far Cry 6 on ultra settings. The 4070 system runs at 108 frames per second at 1080p and 63 frames per second at 4K. The 4090 system, however, manages 191 frames per second at 1080p and 80 frames per second at 4K. Red Dead Redemption 2 on medium settings gives us some interesting numbers. With the 4070, we get 108 frames per second at 1080p and 33 frames per second at 4K. The 4090, on the other hand, delivers 191 frames per second at 1080p and 80 frames per second at 4K. For Borderlands 3, using the Badass preset, the 4070 achieves 144 frames per second at 1080p and 52 frames per second at 4K. Meanwhile, the 4090 hits an impressive 261 frames per second at 1080p and 130 frames per second at 4K. These results show that the RTX 4090 configuration can easily deliver well over 100 frames per second in 4K, especially with DLSS and other optimizations. Even the 4070 model can hit high frame rates at 1080p, although it does struggle a bit at Ultra 4K settings. For example, in Borderlands 3, the 4090 rig averaged 130 frames per second at 4K, while the 4070 rig averaged only 52 frames per second. Similarly, Tomb Raider 4K performance jumped from 54 frames per second to 131 frames per second when moving from 4070 to 4090. in raw GPU-bound titles. The takeaway: the Aurora R16 easily handles 4K and Ultra gaming with a 4090, and is an excellent 1440p and 1080p machine even with a 4070 class card. For context, the Corsair Vengeance won 7600 with RTX 4070 Super showed solid performance as well. One test of F124 at 4K Ultra with DLSS gave around 65 to 75 frames per second, and its Metro benchmark averaged 132 frames per second. This again reflects that an RTX 4070 class card is best suited to 1080p or 1440p. Beyond that, DLSS or a higher GPU is needed. The older MSI Aegis Ti5, with RTX 3080, was also very fast for its time, but its 4K results would be lower than the 4090S. In summary, the R16 delivers killer 4K performance, as GamesRadar says, easily surpassing the last generation Area 51 and other RTX 30 series. One area where the Aurora R16 lags is upgrade flexibility. As mentioned, it uses a custom Alienware motherboard, LGA 1700, that won't support future Intel generations once that socket is retired. The build uses mostly proprietary connectors and attached I/O shrouds, which simplifies manufacturing but locks you into the existing platform. If you wanted to upgrade to a next-gen Intel or switch to AMD down the line, you'd essentially need a new system. By contrast, the Corsair Vengeance 17600 is built on an off-the-shelf MSI Z890P ATX board, which means swapping in future CPUs or GPUs is far more straightforward. The Corsair case also offers plenty of room, supporting 360mm AIOs and extra drives, whereas the Alienware's compact layout limits expansion. On the plus side, Dell has improved other usability aspects. The R16 now uses a standard power cable and includes a rich array of ports, better than many big-box PCs. Warranty-wise, Dell provides the R16 with a 1-year standard warranty, with paid extensions optional. Corsair, in contrast, backs the i7600 with a 2-year warranty, a notable perk for a premium pre-built. In practice, Alienware's support and customization may be worth it to some, but it's important to know that the R16 isn't as future-proof as a more modular PC. The Corsair Vengeance i7600, released in 2024, is a direct competitor in the premium pre-built market. It comes in a plain black Corsair case with tempered glass, but under the hood, it has similarly cutting-edge parts. In Tom's testing, one i7600 had a 14th Gen Core Ultra 7265K CPU, RTX 4070 Super GPU, and 32GB of DDR5. Reviewers praised its build quality and silence. In a stress benchmark, the 265K ran at around 45 degrees Celsius for the P cores, and the GPU at 62 degrees Celsius, with fans quiet throughout. The i7600 also offers extras the R16 lacks, for example Wi-Fi 7 and a rear Thunderbolt 4 port. However, its stock PSU is only 750 watts, so a heavily upgraded version like with a 4090 might need a PSU swap. Overall, Tom's calls it premium performance with excellent gaming results, quiet cooling, and a 2-year warranty. In comparison, the Aurora R16 gives comparable top-end performance, but with a fussier case and shorter warranty. MSI Aegis Ti5. This model from 2021 represents the other extreme, a flashy, unconventional design and bleeding-edge specs of its era: Intel i9-10900K, RTX 3080, 128GB DDR4, at the cost of very high price and complexity. The T5's performance was record-breaking for its time, but one reviewer noted that under full load its fans were audible on the desk, even if not alarmingly loud. It launched at around 4,300 pounds, or approximately $5,000, and had a niche cooling system, the gaming dial, to boost fan profiles. In contrast, the Aurora R16 is more restrained. It doesn't attempt a gimmicky design or dial, and though still premium priced, up to about $4,700 as tested, it is quieter and cooler than the Ti5 ever was. Other 2025 class contenders, not yet thoroughly reviewed, include HP's new Omen 45L Asus ROG Strix desktops and Lenovo Legion towers. HP claims its 2025 Omen 45L top model, with a Core Ultra 9285K and RTX 5090, can hold over 120 frames per second at 4K Ultra. The Alienware Area 51 is also being updated, now with 20-core Core Ultra CPUs and RTX 5080 or 5090 options. We await independent testing, but suffice it to say, the R16 sits well among this crowd. It's essentially a 2024 spec system with 13th gen Intel and up to a 4090, being compared to brand new 2025 flagships. The Alienware Aurora R16 is a solid high-end gaming desktop that prioritizes performance and reliability. Its major strengths are the cutting-edge hardware options including RTX 4090 graphics, a surprisingly silent and cool operation, and a clean compact design that should fit in most gaming setups. Reviewers generally agree it delivers excellent 4K gaming results, killer 4K performance as GamesRadar puts it, and fixes many of the R15's shortcomings. The trade-offs are the premium price and reduced upgrade flexibility from the custom chassis and motherboard. Corsair's Vengeance and other alternatives offer similar raw performance and sometimes better upgradability, but the R16 remains compelling for those who want an Alienware system with Alien FX lights, an integrated software suite, and a setup that runs cooler and quieter than before. In summary, for tech enthusiasts, the Aurora R16 is a down-to-earth powerhouse, in GamesRadar's words, that delivers on its high-end promises, as long as you're comfortable with Dell's design philosophy and price point. Sources: all information above comes from detailed reviews and specifications by trusted tech publications. In particular, we drew on GamesRadar plus Aurora R16 review, and Tom's hardware testing for the Alienware, plus Tom's Hardware's Vengeance Y7600 review, and MSI Ti5 reviews for the competing systems. All benchmarks and quotes are real results from those sources.